Hi everyone, I'm Maria McLachlan. My last video commenting on Riley Grace Roshong's ridiculous attack on Germaine Greer went down really well, and as you obviously love him so very much, I've decided to treat you to even more of Riley. You're welcome. The video he's posted in which he attacks Julia Beck is a lot worse than the one he did on Germaine Greer. It has to be seen to be believed. So, of course, I will post a link below if you do want to watch the whole of it. But I will restrict the clips of Riley that I show in this video because I do know that a few people find him rather hard to stomach for some unfathomable reason. There are two things I want to deal with. One is his unconscionable treatment of Julia Beck, and the other is his very offensive propensity to talk as if he has good critical thinking skills and understands reason and logic, when in fact the two videos of his I've watched are replete with logical fallacies and unsupported arguments. So although I will be missing out loads from his video, there's still quite a lot to get through. I'll also post a link to the original video that he's commenting on, the one showing Julia Beck speaking, and use some clips from that so you can hear what she actually has to say uninterrupted. If you don't know who Julia is, you're about to find out, but the first thing I want to deal with is this claim of Riley's that he makes in both the Germaine Greer video and the Julia Beck one.
An argument is an opinion plus evidence.
No, you may, of course, offer your opinion plus evidence as an argument, but Riley seems to be saying that it's a definitive description of what an argument is. Well, in my opinion, his definition is flawed. I can't offer you any evidence that it's flawed, but I can offer you some reasoning, and reasoning isn't Riley's strong suit. I could, for example, argue that the Earth is flat because if it were round, as widely believed, we'd all fall off it. That's my reasoning. I could claim that God's favourite colour is blue because he made or she made the Earth with 70% plus of the surface of the Earth being water, which is blue. That's my reasoning. An argument is a claim plus reasons. If you can support your reasons with evidence, so much the better. Obviously, I can't offer evidence in support of my reasons, but that doesn't stop it being an argument. It just means that it's an argument that's unlikely to convince anyone over the age of about 6. But the counter-arguments are not opinions. They are facts discovered through scientific inquiry. Gravity, the refraction of light, the lack of plant life and nutrients. Opinions don't come into this, and the reason I'm saying all this is because judging by the comments beneath Riley's videos, a lot of people think he really knows what he's talking about when he really doesn't. Now, the first thing Riley does in the video about Julia Beck is make a claim completely unsupported by either reasoning or evidence.
TERFs are actually pretty consistent with conservative ideology. They maintain that there's an intrinsic quality of what it means to be a gender, that it's intrinsically tied to biological sex, and that's pretty consistent with a lot of conservative ideologies.
Riley is again using the derogatory term TERF to refer to gender critics who have a diversity of views, in fact, but acknowledging that wouldn't suit his purpose of waving his misogyny like a flag, nor would explaining exactly what he means by gender, which is a huge problem with trans activists. Their refusal to define gender makes it impossible to debate with them. In the last video, Riley referred to the totality of social expressions without giving a single example of a social expression. I mean, does he mean stuff like this? A bloke mincing around in a dress and a girly hairstyle?
Charming young lady.
Is that what makes a man or woman? Anyway, his claim that both gender critical feminists and conservative thinkers see gender as natural, innate, and, quote, intrinsically tied to biological sex, when in fact this is the polar opposite of what many gender critics believe, tells us that Riley knows bugger all about feminist theory. What we have in common with conservative thinkers is knowing that men are adult human males, women are adult human females, and that sex is immutable. Where we differ is that we, the gender critics, tend to see gender as referring more to socially constructed expectations and ideas about how men and women should look and think and behave. Now it's time to meet Julia Beck. She is speaking on a panel at an event hosted by the Heritage Foundation early in 2019.
And I am a lesbian.
This is identity politics, right? Identity politics broadly meaning that like saying that your arguments are justified by virtue of some aspect of your identity.
No, it isn't. Identity politics refers generally to when people of a shared identity group together across traditional political parties and affiliations or outside of them in order to fight for interests specific to their identity, like the African American civil rights movement, the gay rights movement, the women's liberation movement. Simply saying she's a lesbian because it is pertinent to the story she's about to tell isn't identity politics. And saying that she's introducing herself as a lesbian because she thinks that makes her arguments justified or that her audience will be persuaded by virtue of her being a lesbian is an ad hominem. It's an attack on her and not on any argument she's made. Usually people wait for someone to make their argument before ad homing them, but Julia hasn't even had the chance to make one.
They're literally using the fact that this person is a lesbian as if to make this representative and give it validity that it otherwise would not have, and it otherwise does not have.
Riley is literally telling us that Julia's argument does not have validity before he's even heard it himself. Or if he has heard it, I mean, it looks as if he's commenting live, which is why he's doing it so badly. But if he has in fact watched the video through already and heard what she says, he's telling us in advance of our hearing her that what she says has no validity. Ever heard of the poisoning the well fallacy? It happens when you say something about a person that is intended to discredit them and thereby influence anyone listening to them to see them in a negative light and to be more cynical about what they say. Riley alleges that Julia is playing the lesbian card, so to speak, implying disingenuity on her part, and in case that isn't enough to convince you to dismiss whatever she says out of hand, he tells us in advance that it has no validity. And he does this repeatedly, even as she's introducing herself. Riley's constantly interrupting her with ad hominems and well poisoning. Now, Julia is, as you can see, a young woman in her 20s. In 2018, she joined the Baltimore Mayor's newly formed LGBTQ Commission.
My story is as unbelievable and absurd as it is commonplace. I got kicked off of the Baltimore Mayor's LGBTQ Commission as the only lesbian.
According to my research, this commission has or aims to have 15 people. If you are surprised to learn that she was the only lesbian, that is probably because you stick with the real meaning of the word lesbian as female homosexual. In the Baltimore Mayor's office, they have redefined it to include heterosexual men who claim to be women. But the truth is that Julia was the only lesbian until other members of the commission voted her off. Why did they vote her off?
Simply for stating biological facts. After a months-long witch hunt, I was found guilty of violence. My crime? Using male pronouns to talk about a convicted male rapist who identifies as transgender and prefers female pronouns.
The rapist Julia referred to is our very own Stephen Wood, aka Karen White, who, having spent time remanded in a women's prison where he sexually assaulted women prisoners, ended up being jailed for life in a men's prison. I don't think Riley realises this is a story about a catastrophic misjudgment by the English prison service, because he spends a long time ranting about the plight of trans people in the American penal system. I'm not going to go there because it's irrelevant to Julia's story. But it is because of stories like Julia's and my own experience in court, of course, that I am firmly of the opinion that nobody should have the right to compel anyone else's speech in this way. It is tyrannical and demeaning. But for a man, Julia's persecutor was a trans-identifying man, to try to force a woman to submit to the presumed wishes of another man, one who has used his penis to rape women, that is sick. Sheer contempt for women. Unashamed misogyny. And I'm sure the very womanly Riley will recognise that. Or he might just misrepresent what happened and mock Julia instead. I wonder which one it will be.
What was my crime? I aggressively misgendered a trans woman.
Well, colour me flabbergasted. So, referring to a rapist by the correct pronoun, the one that refers to his male sex, is not just misgendering in Riley's world, it is aggressively misgendering. Does he have a clue what that sounds like? That poor rapist who has violated women is being aggressively misgendered. Well, boo hoo.
But I just did so because I was pointing out basic biological facts, and it was someone who did something bad. Because, you know, if you do a bad thing in life, well, that means that you lose the woman card, because in order to be a woman, it means that you have to be a good little girl, and if you're not, then you lose the woman card.
No, there's no card, it's not a club, it's the state of being an adult female. Women do bad things too sometimes, but they don't stop being women. The rapist wasn't a woman in the first place because no male person can be a woman. Riley then uses Julia's mention of basic biological facts to segue into a gish gallop about scientific models, which I will spare you most of it because apart from being deadly, it's too daft for words. It's part of an attempt he's making to refute that sex is binary, which continues thus.
So let's talk about binary classifications of biological sex, right? Whereas binary variables refer to variables that are dichotomous, where each data point can only contain one of two possible variables. Like in binary code, you can have a 1 or a 0. You can't have anything else in that.
It's a good idea to try to keep explanations clear and simple. That means not introducing irrelevant analogies. What the hell has binary code got to do with anything? Binary means involving two parts, two components, two states, on or off. The clue is in the name, binary. A binary star, pair of stars in orbit around their common centre of gravity is an example of a binary. Male and female is another example of a binary. There are no more or less than two sexes because there are no more or less than two gametes. The reason biologists classify sex according to gonads and which of the two gametes they produce is because the fusion of those gametes is how we reproduce. Two gonads, two gametes, two sexes. Everyone knows this, and only those who are ideologically motivated deny it, including, admittedly, some scientists. If there's one thing I have learned about scientists, it is that they are just as prone to irrational and cultish thinking as anyone else.
And that's it, meaning using chromosomes, genitalia, or gamete production at minimum each entail non-binary models for sex because we have observed non-binary examples of each. No matter how you classify biological sex, it always, in every way that we try to do it, it always comes out as non-binary.
Oh, he's so full of it. Chromosomes, which are sex-determining mechanisms, are paired. XX or XY, one from each parent is needed. Yes, there are non-standard karyotypes, but it is still the case that in reproduction you pass on one of your chromosomes and it pairs up with one from your partner to make a new pair. So I don't know what he's thinking about here. Presumably with genitalia, he's thinking of the very rare cases of ambiguous genitalia. This is the intersex gambit For the umpteenth time, differences in sexual development do not change the fact that there are two sexes. People with so-called intersex conditions are not a third and fourth and fifth sex. They are anatomical variations within either of the two sexes. Also, please give us your example of a non-binary gamete, Riley. Do they look something like this? And what are they for? Finally,
Whereas it is the growing consensus that sex characteristics tend to be bimodal, meaning there are clusters of characteristics that tend to be associated with what people call female or male, and molecular biology has established that sex is on a continuum with enormous potential for variance. A lot of the current scientific consensus is that sex is on a spectrum.
see how Riley briefly flashes up this PubMed paper just then, as if it somehow supports what he is claiming about sex being a spectrum? I checked it out. It's a review of literature about gender dysphoria in females with a genetic disorder, CAH, which is a condition only affecting females, causing them to produce an excess of androgens, which can result in, let's just say, masculinization of the anatomy or a certain part of it. Why has he highlighted it? Probably because he's confused about what a spectrum is and about the difference between sex and sex characteristics. But just to be clear, there is not a single peer-reviewed biology paper that defines sex as a spectrum. Oh, by the way, Colin Wright of Quillette has got quite a good article on this subject, which I'll link to below. So Riley is conflating sex with sex characteristics, which is a category error that for some reason amongst people who promote gender ideology is as common as poodle poop in Paris. I think that's quite common. Primary sex characteristics are genitalia and reproductive organs. Secondary sex characteristics, body hair, breasts, and other changes that start at puberty. Sex is not defined by sex characteristics, but male and female people are characterized by them. So men have penises, women have vaginas, not the other way around. And what has any of this got to do with trans people anyway? Why do gender fanatics get so hung up on biological sex when they are all about gender identity? I've honestly no idea. It just seems to be a diversion.
Let's go on.
Oh no, it is far more criminal for me to call a male rapist he than it is for him to rape.
You better hope that you never do anything wrong in life, because apparently if you do, you lose the woman card.
Oh God, he's still going on about this bloody metaphorical woman card. But the real giveaway here is you better hope you don't do anything wrong in life, like rape a woman. He makes it sound like an unfortunate accident, a bit like putting on odd socks or forgetting your granny's birthday. You better hope you don't rape anyone and traumatize them and ruin their life, because by Jove, old chap, that would be jolly bad luck, wouldn't it? They'll take your woman card off you. They'll rip it up in front of you. They might even send you to serve your sentence in a men's prison alongside other rapists instead of to a women's prison where you can have fun raping more women. Oh, the injustice of it. Sake. Look, I've had enough of this bloke for one day. I do have a bit more to say, but I'll make that in a short part 2 in hopefully a day or so. So thanks for watching and see you soon. Bye.